to another brief session of the business tech news provided by the 4-Week MBA. In this session, we're going to look at a few key news of the week, which are interesting to follow from business standpoint. And if you also want to be updated about the latest trends in terms of business modeling and business model strategy, just remind that you can go to trends in the 4-Week MBA section, and there you're going to find updated almost daily some of the key articles related to business strategy and business model innovation. You can also subscribe if you want to receive a weekly newsletter automatically delivered to you. Now, let's get to it. I produced an article where I was looking at the growth strategy of platform and looking at how this is often about market expansion. Of course, in many cases when platforms are starting out, they are starting from a niche of the market and then they're expanding from there. But then when they are big enough, of course, their expansion strategy starts by looking at the next available platform on which they can develop their own business. One key example of a company that we can call a platform market expansion was Apple. You may think of Apple as a product company, but in reality, the transition to become really a platform company was completed toward 2004 going forward, when Apple also had the iTunes on the music side and then the Apple Store on the mobile app side. That really were the platforms that enabled also Apple to have a community and an ecosystem that also made its own products way more interesting, and that's how the company moved upward by developing several markets, and with that the company grew to become a $1 trillion company. And when we look at this kind of strategy, usually this is happening for several kind of companies. Another good example at this stage is also a company like Netflix, where we're going, it started as a company in the DVD rental space, then it moved in a much wider market, which is in the streaming and then video streaming, and then of course right now we're looking toward a place where companies are actually expanding, and we're looking for the next big tech platform, which may be augmented reality. And if this happens, of course, this means that we're going to see many other companies and platforms actually growing on top of that, not just Netflix, but many other companies that deal with entertainment, but also with other things, as we will see. Now, based on this really path toward, there is an interesting discussion right now going forward of Amazon, which is in talks to buy driverless technology startup, which is called Zoox. And this is very interesting to look at, because this means that Amazon is also going to evolve its own business model, where, for instance, this can be integrated in its delivery and fulfillment, which is an important part of the Amazon e-commerce platform. And if that happens, of course, this is going to change the whole game of the Amazon as an e-commerce company. Another interesting development also on the side of moving and evolving a business model by in this case moving it in the same market, so by expanding within the same market, is the acquisition that Uber is thinking of Grubhub. So during this time of pandemics, what's happening is within Uber there is Uber Eats, which is actually the most successful side of the business. Most probably a good chunk of the revenues right now have been generated by Uber Eats, and so Uber is thinking to integrate even further this part of the business by buying a company called Grubhub. And if you want, you can look it up also on 4-Week MBA. If you look at Grubhub business model, you're going to find it on 4-Week MBA, where there is the whole explanation about the business model. But the key point is also here we're looking at expansions of actually platforms like Uber that to survive in this time, actually they are completely changing, or in part focusing their business model on what's working right now and what might be working in the coming years. Another interesting development that really covered in the previous session, but it's interesting to cover now, it's also the acquisition of Facebook of a company called Giphy for over 400 millions. And this is very interesting because right now we can look at also some of the the reasons why there was this acquisition. Part of it, of course, is to improve the products that Facebook has, but then there is another part which is more about the technology and, in reality, the advertising business model, where actually Facebook might be, use the Giphy API that have, in this case, over 65 million monthly active users to serve, and enable its advertising business model. So you can read the whole article. I think it's very interesting to look at this perspective. Another development that is happening this week that is quite interesting, it's a whole discussion around entertainment and information platforms from like Twitter to Facebook, and how the dialogue right now is evolving, where pretty much what happened, just to give you a very quick recap, Twitter took position on some of the tweets of Donald Trump by actually restricting them because, for instance, they may be violating some of the Twitter rules. And when this happened, of course, Twitter was blamed of taking a political position, and there was also the position of Facebook, of Mark Zuckerberg, which actually said of Twitter to actually being outside the political dialogue. Now, behind that, more than a discussion of politics here, I would like to introduce a little bit of discussion on how, in some cases, those platforms that, as they grow, they become established brand, and as they do, actually, what happens is they tend to take positions, and as well, of course, they sort of lose their sort of independence as a platform. So in the case of Twitter, the argument is if you're giving this sort of filter on the platform, then you're not anymore a platform, but you're acting as a publisher, and as such, it means that you should be losing your sort of if you have any sort of advantage in acting as a platform rather than a publisher. So the whole discussion is going on. I think it's very interesting to follow, because from how this discussion is going to develop, the whole political agenda and how those platforms will work in the coming decades might be shaped. But also, it's important to also understand this transition from platform to brands, and how companies also like Twitter evolve to be and take more positions in their space. Another thing that it's worth following is the a potential IPO of Palantir, which is a company that does especially analysis for big clients, for instance, from the also governments and other big clients. It's interesting because Palantir is also the company which was co-founded by Peter Thiel, former co-founder of PayPal, and it's this is if Palantir is going to go public, it's going to be nice to see the numbers of the company and how the whole business model work in a more transparent way, and this is really something to follow, because again, Palantir was a company founded in 2004. It's about intelligence, and is a sort of company that has been working with very large government organizations. So we can see how they're using and they're shaping their business model. So those were some of the news of the week, which are interesting developments to follow, and I'll see you next week.